Hey, Ghost Machine fans, this one's for you.
Welcome to the Ghost Machine Fans Podcast, episode 24. That's right, we've made it to 24 of these bad boys, and we have something very special cooked up for you this time. I am Snoggle, also known as Becky, and as usual, I'm joined by my partner in crime, Nick. Nick, can you tell us what sets this episode apart from all of the others?
It would be my absolute pleasure to do so, my dear. As you know, Ghost Machine fans, we have had the privilege of interviewing a few creators so far. We've met with Rob Lee, Brad Anderson, and Brian Hitch. And this time, we have yet another amazing Ghost Machine creator interview for you. I'll introduce him by giving you his bona fides. He's a UK native who currently resides in Italy. He began his career illustrating covers for Doctor Who magazine and Toxic, and then later penciled Motormouth and Killpower at Marvel UK. Later, he worked on The Incredible Hulk as a cover artist, and then on Supergirl with Peter David. I personally recall buying the first issue of that series off the rack as a child, and I still have it. He then moved to Image in the late 90s, where he worked on many titles, most notably Midnight Nation, and then later he returned to DC to illustrate the epic Batman Year One, which was his first collaboration with Jeff Johns, Brad Anderson, and Rob Lee, to be followed by Doomsday Clock, which we all know and love. Most recently, he has illustrated the entirety of Geiger and Junkyard Joe, as well as covers for Redcoat, and he is one of Ghost Machine's co-founders. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Gary Frank.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction.
Well, how are you today, sir? Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm very, very good. And you guys, everything good?
It's a Monday.
It is a Monday.
It's a Monday here too. But I'm at the end of my Monday. You're just beginning yours, I guess.
Oh, yeah, we have a big time difference, right? Is it evening?
Yeah. It's 4:00 in the afternoon here. So this is my afternoon cup of tea. I saw you were just drinking a cup of tea as well, but I'm guessing.
Yes.
We are indeed. So if you're from the UK, how did you end up in Italy?
My wife's Italian. So there was a choice to be made, and one had better food and better weather, and just a more relaxed lifestyle. And so we did Italy.
That's wonderful.
I bet that's amazing.
Yeah, it's nice. There are definitely worse places to live.
No doubt.
I think that's how Nick and I ended up in Ohio.
Really?
Nick and I both met each other in Indiana.
Oh, that's true.
And then, my job took us to Ohio.
Okay.
I'll be honest with you. If the way that you described the parallel between the UK and Italy, you could apply it to Indiana and Ohio actually rather accurately. And we would be the Italy in the situation. Sorry if you're from Indiana. There's no angst or anger there, but that.
On that note, I should probably apologize to anybody listening from the UK as well, because really bad.
Brian Hitch is wagging his finger at you from there right now.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, as you know, we're enormous admirers of your work. You've been kind enough to message us in the past after listening to some of the episodes, so you understand that we truly do deep dive into it. So we get to the point where we discuss the cadence of your panels and your pacing and your visual storytelling and everything like that. So we just want to share with you before we get started with our usual format that we are absolutely grateful for you giving us this amount of time, because your work is something that, I think Snoggle feels this way as well. But all kidding aside, if we're having a tough week, if something's on our mind, your work is the type of thing that no matter how many times I've read it or looked at it, I can pick it up and it improves that moment in time for me and helps me get through that thing. That's something that every page that you have illustrated does for me. How about you, Becky?
We've talked about it on more than one episode that having to wait for the next issue to come out is like a good, painful anticipation. I consume a lot of books and media. Like, I love to read. And I just recently got back into comics with reading Ghost Machine with Nick. He asked me to do the podcast, and I love good stories. And so, as a book reader, I'm not used to having to wait a month to be like, turn the page. But it's like a good feeling. We live in a society where you can consume an entire series in a day if you wanted to. Yeah. When the stories are good and you can tell like there's some heart behind them, I'll wait a month.
Oh, that's nice to hear. Thank you very much. It's nice to know that the stuff we're doing is kind of finding the right audience out there. But it's interesting what you say. I mean, I kind of grew up with that thing as well with comics. When I was a kid and I used to read comics in the UK, they would reprint the American stuff in black and white in like weekly things. So there was like Spider-Man Weekly and X-Men Weekly, which was the original X-Men Weekly. So it was the old Kirby stuff with kind of Snowy Iceman and all of that stuff. So each week I would have to, to wait for that. And there is something special about that. I think there is something special about that rather than having the whole thing in front of you and you read it and then it's gone. After I kind of rediscovered comics as a teenager, I would get a bus I grew up on the outskirts of Bristol, so I'd get a bus into the centre and go to a comic shop and then come back and read everything on the bus on the journey home. And I have really, really fond memories of those times. It's really nice.
That's a very vivid thing. That's the way that I feel when certain people talk about certain properties. Like I can remember distinctly like where I was when I read my first X-Men comic and what it was and like what my dad and I were doing that day and stuff like that. So that's awesome. Thank you.
I have all of that in my mind as well. Even that there was the first actual comic that was put in my hand, which was one of these Spider-Man weeklies. My mum had taken me to, I don't know whether it was the doctor's or the dentist, but we came out and we went to a newsagent afterwards. And then we walked home up the hill to our house, and I must have been like about 30 feet behind her the whole way with my nose kind of pressed in. And I remember the story as well. It was the iguana. It was a story based on a character called the iguana. So I think what it was Kurt Connors before he became the lizard.
Yeah.
The iguana from that experiment then kind of mutated and became kind of a villain itself. And it was I can't remember much more about that other than the fact that it really kind of engrossed me at the time. I mean, we're talking 40 plus years ago, so it's a long time ago.
Wow. Makes you wonder about Spider-Man Weekly UK comics that are out there floating around. Because you're saying that they reprinted US based books on a weekly basis that otherwise might have been monthly. So you actually got content disseminated to you a little faster than they would have.
I think it was broken up. So instead of getting like the full story, the full issue, you'd get maybe 12 pages of Spider-Man, then there would be a backup story as well.
I see.
So we also used to get the pocketbooks, which I really wish I still had now. But that they would also print like old Jack Kirby X-Men things and Fantastic Four things, but they'd be in a pocketbook format and they would be in black and white, so you could see kind of all of the line work and everything, the original art. You don't see much. I wish we could do some more with black and white stuff. We did with Junkyard Joe. We did the first issue. We did a version in black and white to benefit some veterans charities, and it was kind of it. I'd like to do more stuff like that.
We have talked about those issues on the show because if I recall, it was a black and white edition of every one of the number one variants. You could get many black and white covers from that, and they came out a month, I think, after the original series, because the original series came out in October, and I think those came out on Veterans Day.
I think wasn't there one when the original book came out? I think there was one version, and then the other ones came out, I think, subsequently. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure now. It could be. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I get the stuff when it comes in the post anyway, so it's not always at the same point as when stuff's hitting the shelves.
I see.
But yeah, no, I do like to see that stuff on the odd occasion. And not to say that Brad isn't doing a fantastic job on my colors. No, I think
You're just trying to give him a holiday.
yeah.
Yeah,
No,
the guy needs
I
one.
think it's just as an artist, it's nice to see what another artist is seeing when they're doing the page. That kind of the look of it as they're seeing it before it's going to have lettering and colors and everything before it becomes like a full comic book. Kind of nice to see what the guy that's doing my job is doing.
Sure, that's interesting. It also explains why so many sketch covers are popular. Black and white sketch covers are popular these days at variants and things of that nature. We've got some of those, from the series you've done, like, because then they're more limited, but more sought after because it does look different. That's pretty good point. So this episode is going to air on a day that your next comic book comes out, sir. This is airing on the 11th of September, which is the release of Geiger number 6. And y'all really left us hanging. We're going to ask you a question about it here a little bit later in the interview, but you really left us hanging with that President Griffin reveal. Let me tell you, everybody wants to know more. That was amazing storytelling, Geiger number 5. Holy cow. We're going to be deep diving into number 6, actually all the way out on the 25th of September. Because on the 18th, we have to deep dive into Rook number 5. So, Ghost Machine fans, you will have plenty of time to snag number 6, which comes out today, on the day that this comes out.
Okay. So we can talk about
and I have news too. Hyde Street number 2 is now available for pre-order, as well as Devour number 1, which has a release date of October 7th. I'm assuming that's what FOC means.
And that's a great question. It's good that you brought that up. People ask all the time what that means, so we should explain. It means final order cutoff. So if you Ghost Machine fans want to make sure you have a copy of Devour number 1, which is probably a good idea that you reserve it, because they will run out with every single Ghost Machine book so far having gone to multiple printings. And congrats on that, Gary.
Thank you.
Yeah. You have to reserve it by the October 7th. So FOC means final order cutoff. And that's how you're going to make sure that you get a copy of Devour number 1. And right now, Hyde Street number 2, you can pre-order that as well. The number 1 cutoff is already passed. So, yeah, it's important stuff.
And that's your last opportunity to go and prod and badger your local comic shop owner and get them to order it for you.
Absolutely.
A really, really good, by the way, really, really good books. This one of the great things about doing this stuff is, you're working with DC or you're working with Marvel, and there are so many books coming out, and you don't really feel involved with any of it. But with this, because we're kind of a tight group, and the books are so tight, and the line is so tight, you can, we're all kind of looking over each other's shoulder metaphorically and seeing what everybody else is doing, and it's a great stimulus to kind of to try to bring your A game when you see what everybody else is doing. I mean, it really is really, really satisfying. It's so far, I don't think we've put out a book that I wouldn't read, and there are a few books coming as well later. I've just been working on a variant cover for Hornsby and Halo, and it looks like such a fun book. It's just going to be a riot.
We're excited about that one and Rockefellers.
That too. Oh, it's such a great book, and just beautiful stuff.
We think it'll be a good book to introduce our son. He's going to be 9 at the end of this month, so just that good age range. Exactly.
Geiger maybe not so much. Hyde Street, even worse. I would imagine you don't want to be using a 9-year-old to Ivana's kind of cut loose on some of those monsters and stuff, and it's really, really nightmarish stuff.
Hyde Street coming out right when I call September and October spooky season, so it's like the perfect time.
Yeah.
And what's especially ironic about that is we cannot have our son Bruce read Hyde Street because he is a Cub Scout, and after learning more about Pranky, I guess sort of protagonist, one of the protagonists that there's going to be in there with Mr. S. glasses.
You don't want to get any ideas.
Exactly. Very cool character, though. Very cool character. And that's another point. Every one of these books is different than what you see on the rack. A while ago, we made a little funny video about the origin of a Ghost Machine fan. They go into a store, they're looking for something different because everything seems the same. and every single thing that Ghost Machine is putting out does not mirror anything else. And we're in an age where everything you're like, oh, that's like another thing, or that's like a mashup of this.
In everything, in movies and everything, it's just everything is just, we're just bombarded simply by always by variations of the the thing that we've been enthusiastic about the last time, and then so somebody thinks, well, okay, well, let's give them that again. And I think from our point of view, I think a lot of the enthusiasm is that kind of just, I mean, we've all been working drawing superheroes for so many years, and then just suddenly getting these new, fresh environments in which to kind of play around. It's really, really liberating. So I think a lot of it is a lot of the enjoyment that we're all getting out of it is that it's just a complete change of scenery. So I mean, the format's the same, and all of the things that we've learned over the years, how to do this stuff from a technical point of view, but suddenly the backdrop has changed, and it's just fresh, and you're kind of getting up every day to a different thing. You're not drawing the same things over and over again.
I hope that that it's making the fans feel that way too.
I hope so. I mean, I'm a great believer in that. If the people that are doing the thing are having fun, it jumps off the page. It's infectious, right? It has to be. You can't just kind of, you can't phone this stuff in, or there's no spark to it. There's no fun to it.
Yeah, we have a couple of our friends who started, supporting us, listening to the podcast, and they've started rereading, like reigniting their love for comic books, like making pull lists for Ghost Machine. You can definitely tell there's passion behind it.
Oh, the stuff that you guys put on Instagram with like the fan stuff. It's just fantastic to see all of these variations. The costumes and stuff, and the drawings that the fans are doing. It's really, really nice. It's weird because you can. It's almost what we've been doing for so many years, because we all grew up reading superhero comics, and then when you get given a comic, it's your chance to draw that thing. So we're kind of like fanboys ourselves when we're suddenly drawing a book with Spider-Man or the Hulk or something in. But then suddenly to have something that you've created that's come from you, and then that goes out, and then you see other people that are kind of doing their versions of it and seeing the way that they're seeing it. It's strange and beautiful thing. It's really nice.
It has sparked so much creator art lately that all the time we get submissions. People email us, or Nick Churton, one of our field correspondents, he finds a lot of it, and then we try to collect it all every Friday. And yeah, it's really amazing to see how many people are doing that. But because it is a universe that's emerging, you could say, or a brand that's emerging, because it's really 4 universes, as we saw recently, that was announced and clarified for everybody. It's easier for an artist or a creator to come in and contribute to that, and perhaps be immediately noticed, because we're all trying to drive this bus, right? We're trying to drive this community train, because we really want these comics to go on as long as they possibly can. It's going to be fantastic if there's movies of this stuff one day, and action figures and all those things that everybody crosses their fingers and would love. But we want you guys to keep doing this for 100 issues plus. So it's about the community. And there are just so many people that contribute constantly that make what you're describing possible.
Yeah. Well, all those other things you talk about, I mean, they're great because they pay the bills, but at the end of the day, we're comics people, and that's what we're kind of interested in, and it's just using this medium to tell the stories. It's like, I've known Brian, for example, for so many years now, like 30 odd years, but we never really we'd sort of meet every so often at a convention or a signing or something, but we never really kind of got to know each other. Mm-hmm. And now kind of talking to him quite regularly. It's funny how we're both at such a similar place in our career in terms of the way that we approach the job. After a while, it becomes about, you have to find something that keeps you, buzzing off the thing. And for me, it's the storytelling, and for Brian, it's the storytelling. And I think both of us have been in this business for a long time now, and a lot of people kind of, that they started at the time that we started, and then people kind of, they get bored and they go and they do something else, or they find a jumping off point. And there aren't that many of our generation who are kind of, still doing this day in, day out. And I think what it is this is my thing. My theory is that you start out early and you've got kind of an exponential learning curve. You're getting better and better all of the time, especially once you start making a living out, because you're doing it so much.
Mhm.
You're spent so many hours in front of that drawing board. It's not something that you're just fitting in around schoolwork or around a day job. And so you kind of your learning curve goes up. And there's as you kind of, you get like 10, 15 years, 20 years in, and to the actual drawing, it gets harder and harder to kind of push forward to make progress at improving the drawing skills or refining your style. You can do it, but it's it's an effort. It slows down, and I think for some people maybe it gets a little frustrating. Maybe, I don't know if that's necessarily the right word, but there's not the same satisfaction that you get when you see kind of week on week improvement. So I think you need to find another element in the job which is going to keep giving you that buzz, that feeling that you're pushing yourself all of the time. And for me and Brian, I think kind of, I don't know whether it was conscious with Brian, certainly with me it wasn't, but we just realized that it's the storytelling. It's that translating that story off from the script into the medium, into this very, very special medium, this medium which is marrying these words and these stories from one person, but then turning it into a visual into a visual medium. There's a huge buzz to that. You can I sometimes I like lay out like 3 or 4 pages one after the other, and that's where I get the enjoyment now, because I can just like look across and there's no lettering or anything on it yet. So it's just the line work which is doing the work, which is doing the story. And sometimes you kind of you look across and you go one page to, panel to panel, page to page, and when it flows and you can see what's happening there, that's just a massive, massive buzz. It just makes you kind of feel really satisfied that you've done the job as well as you can.
Wow.
I think that it really translates through what you just said. It's honestly really cool to hear you describe it that way, because I know the last issue of Geiger, where he's facing the electrician and all of the drama as you turn the page. We even talked about it in our episode. You can see the visuals telling the story and like how exciting it is for us. Like, it's really cool to know that it's exciting for you as well. Like, we would hope it to be.
Yeah. It totally. I mean, otherwise we everybody might just as well be reading a magazine article or something.
Right.
If you just there's room for that. But the thing that we're doing with this is doing something else. We're kind of like pulling you a little further into the world. If you read something, you're a piece of prose, you're doing a lot of work. You're doing the pictures yourself in your head and everything. Well, what we're doing is just kind of like guiding you a little bit further into that by fleshing out that stuff before it hits your brain box. And it's nice to kind of, it's nice to do that, and it's nice to kind of feel that when you get something and it flows nicely, it's nice to kind of feel that that's worked out and that was successful.
When you said you lay out the pages that way, I was envisioning the train chase, motorcycle followed by train chase in, I believe, Geiger 2 with the bandit in Silverton. And it reminds me of you said with no letters. Many of those pages, they don't have there's very little dialogue.
A sequence like that is where the medium really comes into its own. That is when it works. That's what this medium is built for. I mean, in my opinion, these things where you can run them silently, and it's just a series of images. And of course, the ideal situation is that nobody's reading this thing and going, "Oh, that's really cool. That's really cool. Like, I see he's done that, and now he's changed the camera angle." You don't want any of that. You don't want people to be aware that they're holding a comic in their hands. I don't want anybody to say, "Oh, this is a clever thing that's happened here visually." I want people to open the book on page 1 and then close the book and just feel like they've had a great time. I don't want people noticing any of that stuff. So to just get it to kind of flow seamlessly, that's the challenge.
Well, Geiger 5 does do that, because we literally got a cover with what looked like a deceased Barney on it. And so everybody thought the jury wasn't out on that anymore. And then the story, I think there were 3 different times where I was like, "Oh, he's not dead. Oh, he's dead. Oh, he's not dead." But because of the pacing, because of what you're describing, which I feel can truly only be done in a comic. I know that there's something else to film, but I think that freezing the moment in time also is something that film cannot do, that you are able to use to lend more gravitas to the story.
Yeah. I can't really remember if it actually happened this way, but the way I imagine myself reading comics when I was a kid is that kind of like you'd have like a big moment in a book. Imagine a balding English comic artist now trying to act out this scene. You have the book in your hands and you put it down on your lap and you stare into space and you say, whoa. And then you've got that moment for it to kind of sink in, right? And then you pick up. So when you're reading this, you're controlling also the pace at it. Those moments when you get to kind of direct that or to try to direct that a little bit, but you're kind of, there are these things. You're aware that these panels, some pages you're doing and you're putting in tiny little type panels, and you know that what you're trying to do there is you're getting a reader to kind of go, oh, what the hell's happening next? Oh, and they're skipping through and they're skipping through and they're skipping through because they're doing it. And then every so often you kind of, you lay out a panel, and that's one of those moments. You're just what you want is the reader that's just going to go, wow, and just savor it.
So what would you say, because I mean, you mentioned it a little bit, but what would you say are the major differences between working with the big two, Marvel and DC, versus something creator owned and driven like Ghost Machine?
First, I think you need to say that even working with the big two, not every job's the same. A lot of it is depending on how your relationship is with the editor and the writer and that kind of stuff. So when I was working with Jeff, obviously I worked with Jeff. We started together with a couple of Avengers issues at Marvel, and then later picked up the relationship at DC. But Jeff is super, super collaborative. So you always kind of feel involved. He's always talking to you. He's always kind of, he's bouncing ideas off him, off of me. I bounce ideas off him. And so there's a very strong feeling of collaboration. Not all artists do that. Not all writers like to do that. Some writers just like to do the script, type script, and then you draw the pages and you send them in. But working with Jeff, it was always a little bit like like that. I don't think our day-to-day working relationship has really changed that much. But obviously the nature of the company is completely different. It's a different idea altogether. The idea of kind of a group of creators all owning the company, and not just the creators, but other people within the company. So we've all kind of got a vested interest and an excitement around it all, which you don't necessarily feel when you're working for somebody else. That's probably where the greatest change has come, rather than the day-to-day drawing of a comic book.
Well, it sounds like it's a lot more satisfying, hopefully.
Oh, hugely. Yeah. I mean, Jay Fabok talks about how there's kind of like this. I don't think I really ever felt this because I was so isolated. I was never really in the US where the companies are. I never really did the US convention circuits. I was never really talking to other artists. Jay talks about how there's kind of a feeling that there's competition between artists and for getting the good books, and there's that kind of feeling of because you're a freelancer, you're trying to get the best gig you can, and you're hoping that you get it rather than it gets given to somebody else, and that's the way it is. But the nature of the way that we're doing things now is there's such a feeling of support coming from the other artists, the other creators, the other people in the company. Because if one book does well, everybody benefits. Nobody's feeling this is my shot. I need to make this book needs to be my shot. I need this to land somewhere. I need this to be big. That doesn't really exist. As long as one or two books do really, really well and they allow us to keep working on our stuff, then that's good. So there's not that feeling of kind of like chasing a hit and second guessing everything and wondering what the market is looking for now, and am I on the right book? Is this going to be the book which is going to sell blah, blah, blah copies? You just sat there and you're thinking to yourself, I just need to make this book the best book I can and then enjoy it. And if a lot of people like the idea and a lot of people are prepared to give it a try, then that's good. But as long as the company itself is healthy, it enables us all to kind of, to just concentrate on doing the best books we can, which is, again, I keep using the word liberating, but it's a liberating feeling.
It translates that y'all get the freedom and the liberation to really just focus on your art and not have to focus on a competition or anything of the sort. Do the bigger companies, do they have anyone who works for them, or is it all freelancers?
In terms of artists and writers, yeah, there are freelancers, but there are degrees. So you get to a certain level, you maybe with like DC or Marvel, you'll sign an exclusive with them. So they will make sure that you're always provided with work and you don't work for anybody else. So yeah, there's degrees. There's degrees depending on how tight your relationship is with the company in question. I think it's less attractive now from, I don't know, it just seems a lot of people are moving in the opposite direction. In that when I came into the business and right up to say maybe, I don't know, maybe like 10 years ago, the idea was a lot of people were coming in, they were doing their own book, and they were hoping that that book would then get them noticed by one of the big two, and then that would get you a big book which was going to make your name. It feels now that there are a lot of people now that are making their name at the big two, and they're getting an audience, and then they're trying to translate that into a passion project and trying to get something creator owned off the ground. So it feels like we've come a bit full circle on that.
Kind of exciting because that's really what the comic book industry needs. It needs more new injected content.
Well, it's one where we're doing a lot of things in a different way, but one of the other things which we've done with Ghost Machine is we've done a lot more interaction with retailers and trying to get an idea of what retailers feel, because they're on the battlefront and they've got a lot of useful information, and a lot of it is, we don't like it when the big two does this, or we don't like it when this comic company does that. It really makes our lives difficult. Now, to some extent, you can't do everything because there are lots of ways to approach this, and a lot of things which will benefit somebody and not be good for somebody else. But I think fundamentally, it feels like what the approach we're taking is to understand that if retailers aren't successful, we can't be successful. And that goes as far as even hoping that Marvel and DC, who are basically those are the two companies which are bringing people into the shops. So we all Marvel and DC to sell books and do better. We want them to be more successful. It hurts everybody if people stop going in comic shops. If you're not going in, if Spider-Man or Batman isn't taking a new reader or a new potential reader into a comic shop, we never get a chance to put our stuff in front of them. So it's a little frustrating that you hear retailers kind of talking about how they feel like they're not listened to, because they are the people that fundamentally we need to keep healthy and we need to keep in business.
Absolutely agreed. I think we say the big two, but the Marvel Cinematic Universe brought a lot of new comic book fans into actual comic book stores.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you saw Into the Spider-Verse, but I thought it was just like a perfect comic book movie because it looked like a comic book.
Yeah, totally agree. You could feel that was somebody that kind of understood the medium that they were, that they were translating from.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But almost the Marvel Universe has separated so far away from the comic book part of the universe.
Well, it's become such a self-referential thing. I think movies in general, they refer back to themselves continually. It's how do we recreate that success that we've just had? And sometimes the success was because something was fresh. I mean, remember Iron Man? The movie? It was so fresh. It was great. I don't know. I think we just want people to kind of take more chances with that stuff. But no, I think maybe that is happening. We'll see. I think in the next few years, but it certainly feels like there are some attempts to kind of to find some new direction.
Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of different things coming in the next couple of years for both of them.
Yeah.
Rob Lee described what you're saying in regards to Spider-Man and Batman are going to bring them in so that then they can find Ghost Machine as a rising tide brings up all ships.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that's important to remember. Like, obviously we're super enthused about Ghost Machine. Everything we do is Ghost Machine. But at the end of the day, people end up in a comic book shop, typically if they're new readers, because they've heard of those. Now, I do want to tell you that the frequency with which people come to us and say, I have never read comics before, but I found Ghost Machine, and now I am, is it's way more than you would expect. So I totally agree with you about the necessity of it all.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. And it's nice to hear, and hopefully at some point people will be going into comic shops and the guy behind the counter will say, hey, if you liked Geiger, let me introduce you to this character called Spider-Man.
Yeah. He'll throw Peter Parker a bone.
Yeah.
Help those guys out over at Mark.
Exactly, yeah.
For sure.
Funny.
For sure.
Well, I do know we have several friends and family members who specifically started reading comics just for y'all.
Yeah.
So their whole list are all Ghost Machine.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yep.
It's good to hear. It's good to hear. I hope they're reading other stuff as well, though, now. I mean, Image as well. So they're producing really, really great books these days.
Yeah, it's kind of a renaissance for independent creators right now. There's a lot of awesome stuff.
Totally. And, you talk about, we any conversation around this, as with everything about this industry, tends to focus on the big two. So, I mean, we've just talked for, I don't know how many minutes, but the conversation's almost exclusively about the big two because they dominate everything. But there are so many great books out there by independents and, and by publishers who are supporting that stuff. It's an exciting time.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's actually, that's also another great thing about the thing that we're doing at the moment is the fact that because we're all doing new characters and they're our characters, we don't have a fan base that insists that we're doing it wrong.
Right. Really that's hilarious.
It's really nice to kind of, no, we know this was always supposed to happen.
It's so
because
true.
Really what's going to happen one day is the people that say, oh, you're doing it wrong, they're going to be saying, hey, you didn't do it like Gary and Jeff.
Yeah, well, I don't care about those guys. They're doing it at that point. No. They can do it.
Yeah. So we do have we have a very specific Geiger. Well, it's an unnamed question, really. And if you cannot answer this question, it is okay. We understand that time travel it hasn't been clarified that time travel exists, but since the potential of time travel exists, we understand you may not be able to answer this question without spoiling something. But if we all recall in Geiger 80-Page Giant, when we are introduced to Simon Pure, in his short story, he's in the future in the era of, post unknown war. And he meets up with Nate the Nuclear Knight in a diner in Boston in October of 2050.
Okay.
And he is there because Nate says he wants to hire Simon to kill the glowing man.
I mean, I understand it to from the way that Geiger's going that he was looking for Geiger. I don't think. But the thing is that Ghost Machine 1, there have been a lot of things which have changed in a few of the other books as well. So it's possible that at some point, not everything in that book will marry up exactly. So on me, but it definitely takes place before he's looking for Geiger.
Okay, that was our question. So you're saying that
actually I'm saying that, but it's possible that Jeff has got another.
That's what we were thinking. We were thinking maybe there's a time travel thing. We were thinking that maybe actually like Nate is in there. He does say he's the man I want you to kill. He's unnatural, like they say you are. And he's talking to Simon. I pulled it up. But it's entirely possible that this is after Tariq and Nate became friends, because Nate seems to have some confidence here. And maybe Tariq is like out back of this diner because we never see what happens after here. So everybody's just wondering, like you're saying this is before he meets Geiger.
That was the way I read it, but then I haven't read it since we actually started the ongoing series, because Jeff did that with Brian. So kind of I read those pages as a comic strip, and Jeff said, this is the character that we're bringing into the book, and then I read it like that. I don't know. It's possible that there's some future story, but I suspect not. I think that was just that he was looking and maybe something got changed, or there was some other reason for that. Like I said, there are a lot of the other books which, when they come out, if you refer back to Ghost Machine 1, you'll see there's been like quite a bit of evolution in terms of those story ideas. So I'm not 100%. This is a Jeff question. One day we'll get Jeff on a show, and then you can ask Jeff.
Oh, well, we can't argue with that. Thank you for indulging us in that regard. I think the reason that so many people have asked that is because people are so much really warming up to Nate.
Yeah.
And they like Nate. And
Oh, yeah.
I'm one of those people. And so we're kind of like, I'm wondering how he ended up wanting to do that or what, but I think you're right. No, maybe nobody, but Jeff even really knows, right?
I also wanted to say I think it's masterful, the character development y'all did with Nate, because I hate him on one page, I'm annoyed with him on another, and then I'm like, oh, he's so endearing. Like the roller coaster in the care. I mean, I do think it's pretty masterful.
Oh, well, thanks. I love the character as well. I mean, he's the thing is he looks. So I changed slightly the way that he looks. We also did the thing in Ghost Machine 1,
right,
where he meets Geiger, and in my mind that followed on from the story in the 80-page special. But maybe it's the 80-page special which is the flying in the continuity ointment. So it's possible that we've that everything that you've read from Ghost Machine 1 and relating to Geiger and Nate is still cool.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think it might be the 80-page special, which may be the thing which is slightly out of sync with with the way that the book's gone.
We'll take it. Okay. We love it anyway.
Circling back to the thing, I tell you why I thought of that is because we were talking about like character evolution and development. And I did Nate. I drew Nate from Brian's version in the 80-page special, and he was kind of like a hard-bitten, scarred, clearly a bad guy. And so in the first time I drew him, which was in the Ghost Machine special, I was jumping off from that. But then talking to Jeff about how this series was going to be when we got in, it was clear that he's kind of a very different character. So I altered his face a little bit because although he's kind of, he's not a handsome guy by any means, but there's underneath that kind of hard-bitten exterior, you kind of see that there's quite a vulnerable guy. A guy who's basically all of the trauma which happened to the world and turned Geiger into what he did happened to Nate when he was kind of like a kid, and so he kind of gravitated towards this toxic environment and this toxic group of people and was kind of taken in and into that, and then he sees Geiger as this kind of like representing an alternative way that you can live in this new world. And he's just drawn to it, and he really, really looks up to Geiger because he thinks that Geiger is something that Geiger's not, or that Geiger doesn't think that he is. But then as they get to know each other, you kind of see that the way that they both change in relation to each other. That Nate sees Geiger more as a man and less of a hero, and also Geiger sees Nate as more of a man and less of an irritation. So it's quite nice to see in the kind of, the corners being rubbed off their relationship. But yeah, no, Nate's a great character. And it allows us to kind of go back with Geiger and, you remember the original series, how it kind of, it began and how it ended. So it began with Geiger as this kind of one-dimensional defender of a bunker. He had one purpose in life. He thought of nothing else. That was it. All of his humanity had been stripped away from him. And he just had this one remaining task, which he'd assigned himself. And then by the end of it, he begins to find himself again, because he almost kind of gets a hint of what it would be like to have a family again. And so he starts to kind of, his humanity starts to come back through. But then when we come back to him at the beginning of this series, that's kind of not so much there because it's not being maintained. Once you make him alone again, he needs people to keep him engaged, because otherwise he just kind of like spin off into this monster that he's become. And Nate kind of helps him to kind of, come back again and come back and find himself a little bit. It's not a linear process. Geiger's got a lot of issues. Nate's got his work cut out for him.
I like the way you said that. With the danger of Tariq being isolated makes me think of you recently posted it looked like a cover that you were doing, but it was like an homage to a Midnight Nation cover where Geiger is on his own and then Barney and Nate were in the background. Am I right about that?
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't read much into that story wise. I mean, it kind of works in terms of what we're doing, but the main thing with that was to represent that that composition with
Okay.
with the cover. So, but yeah, I mean, the pieces are slotted in the way that they fit. But that is basically the gist of the characters, that Geiger has issues with people, and Nate is basically trying to break this thing down. And Nate comes to it from this point of view of kind of almost innocence. So he looks at Geiger and he doesn't see the monster. Plenty of other people do. I mean, Geiger's reputation throughout the land is pretty chilling. He's done some brutal things, and he's earned that reputation. Nate has basically come from an environment where he's seen real kind of like real nastiness and real brutality, but on a human level. And so he kind of sees that. He sees that little glimmer of goodness in Geiger, and he's kind of blown it up into a hero figure. But yeah, it's interesting that neither of those things can kind of survive. Neither of those ideas they have about each other can survive contact. They gradually kind of see each other as men, and it's really, really fun exploring that and seeing the way that develops.
Well, we absolutely love it.
Oh, good. Thanks.
Every person who listens to the episode is going to be like, oh, because they're seeing that character development too. So hearing from the mouth of the creator,
I hope so. It's hard though, because I mean, I'm immersed in it, and I'm obviously very enthusiastic about the thing that we're doing, and it's something that I'm thinking about a lot. So with that comes an unfortunate tendency to waffle when given the opportunity to talk about these characters.
Not at all. You just gave us amazing insight into your process, and as well, we've mentioned this in the past. It's awesome that there are many cool variant covers and things like that, and there's obviously a collectible side to our love of Ghost Machine. But what we really focus on, whether it's the content on the page or on the deep dives, we focus on the story and trying to understand the story from a literary standpoint. That's why we are so excited, especially about the world of the Unnamed being a shared universe, because the emphasis is similar to some other, other independent properties in the past that have done shared universe stories like that allow for further collaboration. And you sharing that with us allows us to have a deeper understanding of what we do every time we dive in through a comic, because we talk about specific panels that you draw. Like we spent, 5 or 10 minutes talking about the panel of the electrician's teeth and how, because you made him look a certain way, it was like, that's an evil guy because of his gum line.
Yeah. But I think the approach, like to go back to something we were talking earlier, is that when the mover is the idea of getting a story across, and that becomes the important thing. It's a much healthier situation. It's like kind of starting out with the idea of, okay, we're going to build a universe now. We're going to build a franchise. That was never the way that it was going to be. Hence the fact that it's kind of, the books that we're doing are divided up into these separate genres. It's not, we haven't sat down and said, well, we're going to build our version of a DC Marvel or Marvel universe, or, a Star Wars universe or anything. It's just purely, have we got an interesting story to tell? And then how does that work? And maybe it'll fit into one of these genres, in which case, it will go in that group of books. It will go with that group of books. Primarily, the idea is just telling a story that we think is going to be interesting and fun and emotional.
Geiger is all of those things. That is for sure.
Right. Thank you.
I will ask this. What is your favorite thing to illustrate, and maybe least favorite?
Least favorite has always throughout my career been buildings, cityscapes, stuff like that. I just find it so hard and tedious to make these things look realistic. It's just anything where I'm needing to put a ruler in my hand, I do this stuff and do geometry and stuff like that. I don't know. I just find it chore. When I look at Brian's stuff as well, it always makes me feel terrible, because he just does these beautifully realized cityscapes and everything. And also, if you looked at this in Rook, the stuff that Jay's doing,
Oh yeah,
these incredible, the rockets and stuff, and the machinery and stuff, and he'll just dive into that stuff, and I just can't. I can't do it. What I love doing is emotions and character interactions. I like body language. I like facial expressions, and I like when I'm putting those pages down. As I said earlier, I like to kind of feel. If it's a movie, it's a well acted movie. That's what I'm looking for. I don't want those kind of bump notes where you're not really sure. Like there's dialogue coming out of somebody's mouth, and you're thinking, well, I don't really know what he means by that, because he's saying something, and yet his face looks. I want it to just kind of feel seamless. So you follow the flow, and the emotions and the dialogue and everything matches up. That's what I enjoy the most.
We talk often about your facial expressions specifically.
Okay.
And what it conveys.
That's the fun stuff.
Yeah.
It's the fun stuff for me. I really enjoy doing all of that stuff.
Well, we enjoy you doing it. So how long do you envision yourself telling Tariq Geiger's story?
I don't know. I mean, I would prefer that the rest of my career is all Ghost Machine from here on in, and all the way down to retirement, whether that be on another book, another Ghost Machine book at some point. I mean, I'm not sure. I think at some point you just kind of know when you're doing it. At the moment, I'm having fun, but I've no doubt that at some point I will say, you know what, I've got this other genre or idea or another thing that I'm burning to do. And at that point, when you start getting distracted by thoughts of the next project. But for now, there's nowhere I'd rather be. So I'm happy to keep doing this. I just want to get like a big chunk of it done. I just started issue 11. So we've had 3 issues with another artist, which follow on from 6. And then I came back up with 10, and now I'm on 11. That's added on to the 2 issues of Ground Zero, and then the 6 issues of the original series. And then you can kind of roll Junkyard Joe into that as well, because it's kind of it's all mixed up together. And it was quite shocking when I kind of sat and thought, this is like a sizable chunk of work now there. It's a good backbone for a character. So but like I said, I'm still enjoying it. So as long as I'm enjoying it, I'll keep going.
Awesome. Sounds good.
That's awesome. Speaking of, as long as you're enjoying it, one of the last questions to wrap it up before listener mail is, what do you enjoy? What do you enjoy to do when you're not doing comic books?
Well, all sorts of stuff, really. I have a reef aquarium which sits next to my drawing board. So there's always something that needs to be taken care of with that. I guess I just do kind of like the same stuff as everybody else. I mean, I watch TV, I watch movies and stuff. I do stuff with the kids. I got a couple of kids. One's 18 now, so he's kind of funnily enough, the younger one, who's 13, just started getting into music before he did. So we talk about music and stuff now. But now all 3 of us kind of talk. We're all, we talk about music, and we're always kind of like pointing out and recommending stuff. So I kind of bore them with my old Gen X stuff, and then and my eldest like introduces me to hip hop artists that I've never heard of, because my hip hop knowledge is kind of old school, and I kind of never really followed anything in recent years. So he's kind of always introducing me to guys that are doing stuff now. And then I can kind of introduce him to some more old school stuff. My youngest also, he plays the drums, so he's kind of he's into the indie stuff. So I've managed to introduce him to some of the things which I was always into, when I was younger. So yeah, music. What else? Football, by which I mean, of course, soccer.
Yeah.
So we watch the Liverpool matches together. In fact, we were actually able to go to a match towards the end of last season, and if there are any Liverpool fans watching this, if I say it was the Crystal Palace match, they'll know exactly how I chose completely the wrong game to take them to Anfield because it was a disaster. I was really that we would it would have been a nice introduction to it, but it didn't work out that way. But yeah, so we football and stuff, and then it's Italy, so food, drink, food and wine, beautiful places to go and see all the time. So there's not much of a dull moment.
That's awesome.
Even though we live in America, our son he plays soccer, football. He's a goalie, and sometimes he does, he's so young that they're kind of putting him between positions. But we actually go and see our football club, which is FCC Cincinnati, or it's FC Cincinnati. So that's really cool. And we also have 3 fish tanks. I wish I had a saltwater one, though.
Oh, it's a lot of work. Although mine's been running for a few years now. It's quite stable, but it was the first year or two were constant headaches. Now it does to some extent take care of itself, but there's always something that needs tweaking or testing.
Yeah, it usually takes a while to get it balanced out when you first make one, right? Is what we heard before we venture into that.
Yeah, once you get all the corals growing and everything, it's okay. They tend to they look after each other a little bit. You follow the growth rates. You know that when everything is growing, you need to keep an eye on the dosages, keep the dosage up, make sure they're all happy. But they let you know, corals let you know before fish when there's a problem. So as long as you're watching the corals, you can see when things are working.
Is it when they begin to lose their color that you have to be concerned? Is that what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Once you've looked at the same coral kind of, every day for 3 years, you see the little differences, the little changes in tone. You go, oh, something's up. And then you start testing for the alkalinity and the calcium and things.
Okay, cool. Well, one more thing that we do in every episode now is we have listener mail question. And we tried to make sure to choose one that was obviously appropriate to our guest. So the question comes from Mark at Legion of Comics. They're pretty active out there supporting Ghost Machine as well. And he made a note that when President Griffin was revealed at the end of Geiger number 5, that his aesthetic seems to be like an homage to the Invisible Man, perhaps, in H.G. Wells. But also, it's interesting, when you look up H.G. Wells and that character, his name is Jack Griffin. So we're just wondering, and if you can't tell us, we understand.
Sorry. Are you wondering whether he's invisible under the bandages?
Well, I'm wondering if it's more than just an homage, because it's kind of like specific, so it makes sense he would be the Invisible Man, or some people are theorizing that he might be the first ghost or something of that nature.
It's not. Yeah, I mean, it's there. It's a nod, but it's just a little nod from Jeff, I think.
Oh, okay. Well, we like stuff like that, so it does.
But what he does look like will have to come as a surprise. What's going on underneath those bandages?
Well, that's exciting.
And it makes me feel like he's not invisible under there, but that's just me. That maybe he's not. Maybe it's something else.
I'm gonna plead the fifth because I think I may have already said too much.
No problem. We don't. The thing is, we don't want anything spoiled because there's no way it's going to be delivered the way that it would on the page. Like we're happy to wait.
That's a constant dilemma. So we we know there's a character which I've recently done, and there's that dilemma. Do you put that on a cover because people are going to go, oh wow, it's going to come out with the solicits and people are going to see that and it's going to generate in. But my preference is always to think of it as a story, because that's what it has to be at the end of the day. That has to be the priority. I don't want to lose a moment, an important story moment, just to generate kind of interest in the book. I would much rather that kind of our the fans that are reading it, they get that moment pure. They get it the way it's supposed to be delivered. So but it is a dilemma with these things, but that's my preference.
Because it's a double-edged sword with the solicits, because you do want people to get excited. You want them to know something exciting is coming. You want them to go out there and get that book. But
sometimes there's a reveal and there's some power in the reveal, and you don't want to lose that moment because somebody's already seen it on the cover, or worse, they've seen it on the solicit for the cover.
Right. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Gary, and
from you too. I've enjoyed it.
That means the world to us, and I know that Snoggle probably has a couple of things to say about it, but I do want you to know that we obviously purchase all of the books and all the variants and all that fun stuff, and there is a collector side to what we do, but you could offer us the rarest Ghost Machine comic signed by 1 million people with the CGC grade of 25 or whatever the crazy thing would be, and and we wouldn't give this interview up for that, because
thank you.
Well, it takes it to another level of understanding and appreciating your work, but it truly makes everything that you already do for us that's enjoyable more enjoyable. So
thank you. And honestly, thanks to you guys. I mean, apart from the support and apart from the fact that you on Instagram and using the platform that you're building to help us, it's just nice to kind of have a chance to talk directly with you guys, but also via you guys to the readership. And I don't know what people think when they're reading a book. I don't know if they really know how much thought or how little thought we put into various things. So it's kind of nice to get a chance to speak to people out there and say and give them an idea of what we're thinking about when we're doing these things, and what our motivations are, and what we enjoy about the thing we're doing, because it's otherwise. I mean, I grew up on a small housing estate in the West Country in the UK. So for me, all of the stuff which was going on at like the Marvel bullpen and everything, it might as well have been Olympus. There's no way I could imagine what those things, what those people were talking about or what they were doing. It was a crazy thing. It was a million miles away. So yeah, it's nice to kind of for me now to kind of to have that opportunity to sort of kind of to speak to people and say, this is what we're doing, and this is why why we're doing it, and give people a little bit of an insight, I hope, into what it's like on the other side.
It does give us as fans an enormous amount of insight, but it also lends to everyone having so much confidence that this is going to be something that perpetuates for a long time, and something that injects much needed ingenuity into the current comic book climate.
Yeah.
And when you say speaking through us to the fans, Ghost Machine fans, how that makes us feel. It's an incredible thing for you to say. And so we would obviously love to have you back on anytime. And I'm sure that we'll have to bring you back in the future when more new things happen and evolve.
As I said, I've enjoyed it. So yeah, that would be great. Yeah. But yeah, no, I totally see what you're saying as well about people want to feel, if they're going to invest emotionally and financially in these characters, that they want to know that we're in it for the long haul. And all I can say is, as long as people are out there, buying our books and enabling us to make a living at it, then we'll keep doing it.
Heck yeah. Snoggle, did you have any words for the end of the episode? I imagine you do.
Yeah, I mean, as always, thank you. I think that this was an absolute delight, just getting to talk to someone and getting to see your passion. So one, I'm really happy for you that you're getting to do this and create something that seems to be so fulfilling. And with that said, thank you, because we can feel it and see it in the work that we're getting from it. So thank you so much. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thanks very much. The things you just said, that's all we can ask for. We just want people to just to feel it, that what we're feeling.
Well, we do. We certainly do.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
And if you want to check out all the other fun content that we have on this show, as well as on Instagram, our wiki, and our forums, you can find it by going to www.ghostmachinefans.com, which is our landing page. It'll take you to all of those. We're also on Twitter under Ghost Machine Fans, thanks to our Twitter captain, Cameron, also in the UK. Thanks for joining us on the Ghost Machine Fans podcast.
Yes.